It's a non-core banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp, learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Ayy, yeah, purpose and practice. Podcast game, ayy, he got it mastered. It's encore.
Yo, peace to the community, the Purpose and Practice community. We're back again with a special host and a special guest. Your special host is Dr. Ross Dill. I don't refer to myself as special too much, but you know what? I like the way that just sounded. So you got a special host and a special guest here on a pop-up edition of the Purpose and Practice podcast. We are here on a Sunday, here 4:15, man, 4:20 right now. Hopefully y'all out there, you know, doing y'all thing, having a great Sunday, a great weekend. The weather is beautiful. Hopefully y'all out there chilling. And y'all can check us out today, man. We got a special guest in the house today, in the place where we bring stories to the forefront. You know, this is all about sharing stories and sharing narratives. That's what we do here on the Purpose and Practice podcast. We got another dope Long Branch head coming through and sharing some of his experiences and some of the great things that has done and that he continues to do. And he's a young man that, you know, I had the pleasure of meeting when he was a middle school student. Man, I had this young man, may have been 7th or 8th grade. I think I first met him as his teacher. And brilliant young man, brilliant kid, man. A very good sense of emotional intelligence, a very good sense of self-awareness, able to have and hold conversations with adults at a very young age, respectful conversations with adults, great insight. You know, he was just, I was able to see so much in him in the middle school. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to coach him, man, for 3 years. You know, when he played football at the high school level, I was able to serve as his coach and, and just be in a lot of different circles with him through his high school career. And I've just always been impressed with this young man, one of the most respectful young men, a great teammate. I mean, a super teammate. I couldn't even begin to put in words, you know, how great of a teammate this young man was, and just a great young man. So I'm not surprised about, you know, the path that he took after graduating high school and, you know, going off to college, playing college at a very high level and working hard to do that. And I'm really interested in hearing that story, you know, in terms of like really, I hate to use the term overachieving, but really like putting in that work, man, because it wasn't like an easy, like, oh, you know, you just straight D1, dude. It was like, and we're going to hear about that. And I can't wait to hear about that because I was always impressed by what he was able to do there. And then the brother even served our country, man. He went off and served our country. So salute to him and salute to all of those who went out there and did that kind of work for us, you know, in this country and serving this country in the military and doing great things. And now, you know, he's doing his thing as a family man, which is most important, man, in terms of holding down the family and being a good man. So we're interested in hearing that and hearing about his career now in the pharmaceutical industry. So I've said enough. I've said a lot. I can't wait to hear from this young man, Jared Brabham. We got in the house. Jared, how you feeling, bro?
Feeling good, man. I couldn't have said it any better, man. That was so kind of you. Thank you. It sounds great. It's all good. You know, the weather here in Philadelphia is great. I was telling you before we started, I was out at the pool hanging out. So all is well, man. I'm happy to be here. And it's an amazing platform you've been working on. I've definitely been tuned in. And you're doing good work, you know, spreading that positive energy, that positive vibe. So can't thank you enough for that. And, you know, happy to be here today.
Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it. All I'm doing, Jared, is bringing those stories. Y'all already got the stories, man. I'm bringing them to the forefront because I think I always believe this, even as a teacher, right? I believe storytelling is the best way of learning. I think folks really identify with storytelling. I really do. So even as a teacher, I really believed in the power of telling stories. And I think that this platform allows you all to share your stories, and then other folks hear them and they're inspired. Man, I hear them and I'm inspired, bro. I listened to last week. Choice was on Thursday. And I went back and listened to that podcast, and I got so much out of it, that inspired me to be like, wow, like this brother is really, really inspiring. And he's someone who I once called a student of mine, so just powerful stories that I think are really inspiring folks, So I'm just happy to have created a platform to bring them to life. So awesome. That's what we're all about here, is going back and getting those stories and bringing them forward. So with that said, and speaking about going back, one of the things we love to do, Jared, on the show is we love to start off by telling stories and telling the story and what your story was like growing up. Believe it or not, this is the part, especially when I talk to young people who actually watch and listen in, they say that they love hearing the background stories the most, because they say that like that kind of inspires them to be like, all right, some of these folks came from, these people came from like crazy circumstances, tough circumstances, overcame a lot. And that's what kind of gets me going and gets me on my motor. So what we want to do right now, Jared, if it's okay with you, we're going to go back and, hear a little bit about what it was like, growing up as a young Jared.
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, Long Branch, right? So I'm class of 06, right? And a lot of my other 06 alum have been on the call. So in addition to sharing the positive news on the podcast, it's been good to see them and see what they've been up to. So I have a big appreciation for that. But
shout out to 06.
Yeah, right. Don't have much to complain about, man. So, I more or less grew up a single child. I had both my parents at home, you know what I mean? So I definitely I didn't go for much, right? So, Burpee, my dad, and Sue, for my friends who may see this, you guys know my parents are always around, always involved, always engaged, always supporting, and whatever it was I was into. And can't get them enough credit for setting me up for success, getting me out the door, getting me off to TU. We didn't really know what we were doing. They obviously hadn't done that. So my dad had worked for the city. My mom was from Long Branch as well. So just kind of born and raised in there. So, but yeah, it was good. Probably one of the tougher things that I said that maybe I had to deal with at an early age is being biracial, though. So like that was a benefit, obviously, to me now. But I felt like in the younger years of Long Branch, I had a hard time figuring out like kind of what lane am I supposed to be in, right? So I lived like north of the tracks up until middle school, and then once I hit middle school, I moved to like 7th Ave, right? So I wasn't gifted. I had primarily kind of like white peers, if you will, and then I kind of moved to the other side of the town where I was like, the vibe was different, you know what I mean? So I kind of had to, like, I was a little bit of a fish out of water, so I had to kind of get my bearing, and that was a interesting time in the high school. There was a lot going on. So trying to find that right track, and I do feel that I found some solace in football, because I didn't get to play until I was in high school, because I don't know what it is now, but Pop Warner was like 160, and I wasn't hitting that at all.
It's crazy, Jared, because I think nowadays you would be able to get on the field, Pop Warner, like you would in AYF. Like it's just different now. I really think you probably would have. A lot of heads would have been able to get on the field. Now thinking back to the way things are now. Yep.
Right. So I mean, I think that's when I started to turn a corner, right? Because I didn't really have an identity for myself. Like I'm not really sure where I need to land. But when I started playing football and kind of getting that cohort and that family in the 9th grade, I feel like things started to I found a track, and I think that's why I poured so much into the game, because that was just my lane where I could kind of focus and key in, and as years went on and seeing some of the cats that was ahead and them getting their opportunities to kind of go on to school and go off, like Berkeley. I remember like when we were young, they took the freshman team to see one of his games at Rutgers, right? And he was just like larger than life, you know what I mean? So,
shout out
to see that, man. And, a ton of those guys. So I just kind of decided like, okay, I think I'm going to buy into this. And I think I'm going to try and make this like my lane to kind of go on and get an opportunity to see bigger and better things. You know what I mean?
And you did just that, man. And, you hit on some things though, Jared, and I'm just going to go back a little bit, because you talked about, you talked about being, biracial, you know? And you talked about how that was something that you kind of, you know, you grew into understanding that, you know, and I wanted to just ask you, like, in terms of racial awareness, when do you think that you hit a space of like, all right, identifying like with you being biracial? Like, was that something from gate? You just understood that from a baby to elementary to, or did it really hit you at different phases of your life where it impacted you differently?
So I feel like when I was an adult is when I really started to embrace it. Like my time in the Army and then now professionally, I feel like when I was in Long Branch, like I chose to identify as Black, you know what I mean? Like where I was living, like on the Pook side, all my friends, like this environment, I'm like, okay, like I would be better suited in terms of like fitting in and having like a less static in my situation. And if I wanted to kind of buy in and be like the kids who were here, but I think, and that was fine, you know, through high school, through college. But I will say in college, I feel like I missed out on some of the network, like being at a university like Temple, where there's over 50,000 people, but I'm kind of just sticking to the small percentage of the student body who look like me, right? But when I got to the Army, you don't get to pick and choose, right? You got to do what you got to do, and you might be one of 300, one Black guy out of 300 people, so you know, and you don't really have a choice. So I think at that point, I kind of learned a little bit more about the benefit of seeing both sides of the coin, right? And so I think that I was able to kind of lead from having a unique perspective that some people don't have, seeing both sides, and that paid dividends there. And then today at Merck, where I'm at, I'm able to, I feel like, get things done and drive results because I understand what you guys are saying. I understand what you guys are saying. I often serve as like a bridge, and professionally, but also just all that's been going on, you know, as of late, right, with the social unrest and the topics on the table now. And I definitely take advantage to bring my perspective and, you know, drive some conversations, some dialogues professionally to open those doors and kind of get those conversations on the table, because they're important ones to have. But in the corporate landscape, they're not always like the most comfortable ones to have. So it's, as an adult, it's been positive for me.
And that's why I wanted to ask you, man, and thank you for breaking that down and sharing that, because you know, I think, you know, racial identity is a big piece of who we are, you know, as people. And biracial, I'm always interested to speak to those who are biracial, multiracial folks, because I'm always curious to see, you know, was there ever a time where they shut a domain of race down? Like, for example, if mom was white and dad was Black, was there ever a time where they were like, oh, I just want to identify with, you know, my Black dad and my Blackness, and I don't want to, you know what I mean? Because I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and we were having a conversation, and she's a white woman, and she was like, you know, and she's in education. And she was like, you know, I'm really out here having these conversations with my colleagues about, you know, inequity, about racism, systemic racism. And I said to her, I said, you know what, that's good that you're doing that. I said, because truth be told, a lot of times those who are being oppressed the most are also the ones who are responsible, so-called responsible for advocating and for themselves and you know, in teaching. And I said, it's always good when you know, a member in this case of a dominant, you know, a dominant, you know, a race in this case, you know, is the one out here saying like, you know what, now we need to improve this. We need to understand the importance of how race and what race plays in our daily lives and systematically and so on and so forth. So when she said that, I said, yo, yes, because that heavy lifting, it's important that, you know, that white folks do that heavy lifting as well, you know?
Yeah. And I think, you know, what I've noticed this past year, and so like the dialogues that I facilitate at work have opened a lot of doors for like white colleagues who want to be allies, but may not know how to go about it. Right. So I mentor professionally, like through some organizations as a part of Merck. And like I've had white people approach me and say, hey, look, I know I wouldn't be a perfect mentor because I'm white, but I want to be involved. And I kind of have to, I turn that right there and say, look, just because you're white doesn't mean you can't be a mentor to a person of color. And then then like, it even makes them open enough to want to be involved and ask those questions. And then I think that goes a long way, because it's not just, you know, a stereotype. You're like, oh, the angry Black folks, they're complaining about this, they're complaining about that. So it kind of gives us some credibility. And then myself, you know, I always, when I have these dialogues, I come straight, like, my mom is white. I have the perspective, like, you know, I understand some of the things that how you see them, but conversely, like, my father is black and I understand this side as well. So it kind of gives me some credibility to speak to both sides. So it's something that's unique to me. So now I kind of leverage that to just try and change the narrative and try and help others, you know, pay it forward, if you will.
Love it, man. Love it. And, you know, it's funny because I think back to, and one day I got to do I think I'm gonna try to do a show and get some of the folks who were in the class together, because my last couple of years teaching, I was fortunate enough, and shout out, you know, to the principal at the time, Mr. Simonelli, who gave me the blessing to introduce a course, race, gender, and ethnicity, and that was back in 05, 06. And when I tell you, and I think you took that class, but I think you had another teacher. Did you have, were you?
I don't remember. I don't remember I was with you in high school, but I definitely, but I know the class because I remember like some of the dialogue and how popular it was for sure.
Yes. And I'm like, I think back, Jared, and I'm like, yo, that was back in like 05, 06, man. That's like 15 years later. 15 years later now. It's good that these conversations are to the forefront, but back then these weren't popular conversations.
No.
And we were having them in school, like with young people. Y'all were having these deep conversations, you know, in class. And sometimes I run into people and they're like, yo, everything that's happening now, we were talking about that, you know, like 15 years ago, you know, in that class. And they were like, I kind of know how to talk about it because we built that, you know, we had that community where we shared those discussions.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. So you tell me about, though, you talked about gifted, bro. And right now, in the state of New Jersey, particularly, there is a huge legislative push and policy push from the state of New Jersey to really create gifted and talented education that is more inclusive and open to different backgrounds of students, because we all know traditionally in this country that gifted and talented has really and which leads into your honors classes when you get to middle school, and then leads into your AP classes. It's predominantly white. So one of the pushes from the state in New Jersey is to institute a policy that is going to open up more doors in terms of inclusion and including more folks and young people from diverse backgrounds, whether that is racial, socioeconomic, or even needs in terms of special education students being, you know, introduced to gifted and talented education. So in English language learners and so on and so forth. My question to you is, you talked about being identified and gifted. And I remember, I think I had you and I think I was actually, believe it or not, teaching a gifted class when I had you in middle school. But my question to you is, what were your experiences like with gifted, if you can recall back to elementary school? Whereas you're saying you were at that time identifying more as a Black young man, you know, a Black student. What were your experiences like, man? And how did you end up in that? Do you remember and recall how that all played out?
Well, I feel like, so what I would just comment there is, in the earlier middle school, grade school, I felt like I had more white friends. And I think that was because I was in gifted, and that was fine. You know, like there was rigor involved, but like I think I was with the same kids from like second to like fifth. So it was just our little cohort. We would just year after year after year. I didn't really notice it because I think when you expose kids to something at that level of rigor at that age, it is what it is. Like they don't know any different. I feel like, and I think that the inclusion and kind of some of what you were talking about is awesome, because I feel like when I moved to 7th Ave and started having more Black friends who weren't a part of that program, and I'm playing sports, like I didn't want to do it anymore because my friends didn't have to do it. So it's like, can I go hang and be with my boys, or do I have to go home and like spend hours and hours and hours on work? Now looking back, like obviously you can see the value in that and getting that like higher level of education and like setting me up for success like in college, right? And so like you can't change time, but I don't know, like it just wasn't cool to be smart. And like, you know, I think that that's a narrative that like, I don't know if that's still going on at that grade school level, but like that's something that should change. And I try to talk to my son about it. because he's keen in the sports, obviously, as am I. But I kind of try to put that's cool, but I try to really put the emphasis on education, because in the long run, that's where it's at. So if there was a way to kind of enlighten our community on the value and importance of that, like in the early years, like the better, you know what I mean, for sure.
Yes, and I agree. And there are pockets. There's still pockets. I think, listen, I know I grew up poor. I grew up in a Black, neighborhood, high poverty, high love, high poverty. But one thing that my grandmother, my mom, my dad, the people who raised me up, they were all about was education. They didn't have high degrees of education, but they were like, they knew that education was a pathway, and they were big on like, you need to get your education, like they didn't know the ins and the outs, but they knew that education was important, so it's like, because sometimes it is this narrative out there that, there's certain folks that don't believe in education and don't value education. And I don't agree with that narrative. I think that a lot of times there's some folks who have had horrible school experiences, that actually, detracts from the positive relationship in terms of with schools. And there are groups of people who have had horrible experiences, with schools. But there are some, young kids out there who I think they don't have the academic confidence. And then that leads to a lot of times and not only confidence, but also they don't have the skills, and they have sometimes been undereducated or miseducated, and therefore they don't, they're not at a level to compete academically, and therefore there becomes some, disconnection from school. And I think a lot of times we look at the disconnect as opposed to looking at, all right, what caused this? Like when you're telling your story, you had to, if you can think back in elementary school, you had to feel kind of confident, and like you had to feel confident as a student. So therefore you had to have certain skill sets that you felt good about, and you had teachers praising you, and that those things are really, really, really important. And like I said, I remember even in 8th grade, I believe it was 8th grade when I first had you, but having detailed conversations, with you and a lot of your peers, and then especially in high school. So you go on to high school, man. I know you end up at Temple, but if you don't mind, especially there's a lot of young people who, may be listening in, and they're interested in, high school. How do I, get to a point where I can accept a scholarship, or how do I get a point to where I can walk on to a university, campus, and then, as an athlete, but then be able to qualify academically and then maybe earn a scholarship, Can you just talk about what your high school was like, what kind of work you had to put in to be a good student and to be a stellar athlete?
Yeah. Really, I mean, that's where I got my work ethic from, right? So lots of work. There's no shortcuts, right? Especially like me, I was a little undersized, right? So like 6 foot tall, whereas, I like to always use Dip as my comparator, right? Because we obviously we're not up in the same place, but we kind of had different journeys. So like Dip was 6'5", 6'6", right? And I'm 6 foot. I think on the rosters, I'm 6'2", right? So like I would get some of the attention, but I think when the recruiters would come in and talk it was like me, Dip, and Alander would get a lot of that attention, and they would see like, oh, you're not really like 6'2". So like the height thing was really a challenge for me to try to go D1. So it wasn't sweet, because you guys, you see guys who are 6'6" and can't really play a lick, but like they know that you can't teach 6'6", 300, right? Like you can't teach size. But I didn't have that, right? So I had to develop in other ways, right? So I knew I had to have my grades right. And then my parents were also big into academics. So I didn't take the AP route, but like the class that I did take, like I always tried to maintain good grades. But really, in terms of the football, I think it was like my my freshman year, I wasn't really that good, to be a big guy. So, that's tough to come into that, to have some size, big guy, like compared like to the rest of the team, right? But to be soft, right? Getting put down, getting thrown around, like Manny Navarro would just you know,
yeah.
It was discouraging the way
yeah.
he would kind of toss me around. But I stuck with it, and then that next year, that sophomore year, I got some play, like, you know, and then I just kind of wanted to, you know, I touched on it in the early, like seeing Burke and some of those cats get a chance to go to college. I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. So like I think at that point, I think I may have still done track. I did basketball like 1 year, but every other sport was in support of football. So like I chose, you know, this is what I'm going to do. Everything's in support of that.
And you worked out, man. I remember you being someone who put time in the weight room,
right,
and training yourself.
Yeah, I would, you know, I took the class, you know, I don't even know that's an option still, right? But I would take weights as part of gym. Coach Waters, shout out to Coach Waters. He would pick me up in the morning before school. Like, you know, this is in like 10th grade, 11th grade. He would pick me up, let me into the weight room at like 6:30, whatever, 7 o'clock. I hit the weights and you know, let me use the shower in the coach's office, so I didn't have to like go out because no one was using the showers during the school day at that time. So like, you know, I would lift then you know, have regular practice. So I just would stay on top of it in the summertime. I did a lot of extra work with Jazzio. You know, that was like my right hand man. We you know, extra sprints whenever the gym was open up. Like Coach King used to open it all the time. Just understanding and trying to put myself in the best position, knowing that it wasn't going to be sweet, like trying to earn a scholarship, like just trying to get my way. You know, that was my ticket to, you know, to get out of Long Branch and like get my education, because I knew like school's expensive, right? So I'm like, all right, this is how I got to do it. Like that was my MO. And I enjoyed the work, you know, and I think it's important to, like, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but if you can find something that you're passionate about and putting the work in and putting the hours in isn't like a struggle, like that's good. You know what I mean?
Something that you enjoy. And I think the passion piece it really is important, man.
Right.
And I mean, if you don't mind talking a little bit, Jared, about things that you may have had to sacrifice and give up. I think a lot of times, you know, what we do is we talk, which is good. We talk about the things that you had to do. Like we just talked about, you had to do what you needed to do in terms of studying, and in terms of being a good student. You had to put in extra time, you specifically, because you didn't play football before 9th grade. You had to put in extra time in terms of training and so on and so forth and working out. But seldom do we talk about what you had to say no to. Like what were sometimes, and sometimes we call these things distractions, but what was it that you had to say no to be able to say yes to those things?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't think that was as big of a problem for me, because like I wasn't super, like I wasn't into the girls like that. Like I wasn't getting a ton of females. Like that wasn't a distraction for me, and I wasn't like, I feel like I was still a little bit socially awkward. So I wasn't really like on the party scene like that as much. So compared to some of the other cats you have on here that, you know, they get into high school and like the whole, you know, the floodgates open up. That really wasn't, that wasn't really a challenge for me, to be honest. So I just would just lock in. I think that, you know, the only other thing is I did work, you know, especially in the summer. So like, it would be like, work out, work, practice. So like I just free time. Like I didn't have a lot of free time where it's like, I guess I'm getting off school. Yeah, if I had to say one trade-off, like I'm not getting off school, going home, playing video games. We're getting off school, I'm doing weights, or I'm doing studying, or I'm doing this. But that seems, I never had a problem with the work ethic. So it didn't really feel like a sacrifice. I more so framed it as, okay, like I want this, all right, this, so I have to do this, and that. And that's kind of, you know, we'll talk through the other years, but I've applied that same progression, whether it's through college or professionally or whatever. Okay, so I want to do this. What do I need to do? Okay, and then just line it up and knock it down.
And I think that that's important, though, man. And you just simplified it. But that is like the story of life. Like, okay, this is what I want. This is my objective. This is what I want to accomplish. So here are the things we're going to have to do to reach that objective. And then it comes down to, are your daily habits aligned to doing those things?
Correct.
So if you don't mind, if you can go through, you know, you kind of blushed on it already, but like what your daily habits were in high school. I'm not even, we'll get to, you know, college and what you do professionally, but even at high school, can you recall daily habits, because I believe we all are collections of our habits. Can you recall any daily habits that you did that you made sure that you were aware of? Like, I want to do these things in order to accomplish this.
The biggest thing was the weights, especially like early, like, not many kids are hitting the weight room before school. I mean, maybe today, but like not in that time. Like that was kind of like an outlier, you know what I mean? So just going against the grain in that way and just being willing, like, okay, if I'm not running a 4.7 and I'm not 6'6", like I gotta be strong. I gotta be explosive, right? So like just putting in the work to do that. And again, like you said, like not doing sports like at a super competitive level until high school. Like I was a little bit behind the curve. So just committing to it, you know what I mean? And it not coming naturally, right? So like I feel like someone like Manny, like grew up like that. Like he could just rip a car in half at like 5 years old. So it's like I had to really work at it to be able to try and achieve the goal, man. So just being consistent, whether I felt like it, whether I didn't feel like it, and that's something that I picked up from that correlates to everything else you do in life. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. And I definitely can identify, man. I had an opportunity to play with some really talented brothers who were just naturally just beast. And it was like I had to spend extra time working out, extra time in the film room. Like I had to get an edge in other ways. And I made sure that I did that. And then there were some people who just had it naturally, like they just, but then they also put in work and just were like phenomenal. But I definitely hear you. And that's something that's always stuck with me. And I always was like, I always want, I can just remember and recall just being like, when I'm working out, if it's in the morning, I'm like, nobody else is working out right now. Did you used to have like that kind of like feeling that,
that game
Absolutely. In your head?
Absolutely. Because you might be faster than me, you might be taller than me, but you're not going to outwork me. You know what I mean? So I felt prepared for games. I felt prepared for, and you touched on film, and I kind of forgot about that because it's been so long, but I would stay in the film study. So it's like, getting my football IQ up and just being as strong and explosive as I could be, to try to do the job at the highest level I could possibly do it.
Yes, that film study was key. It was instrumental, man. It was instrumental, especially for us who had to work a little harder to compete. So at what point, a lot of times I have guests on, especially those who play, at a high level in terms of college. At what point did you start getting attention from colleges? What was that like? If you can explain when that started to happen and what that experience was for you.
Yeah. I think after my sophomore year, right? So I started playing and, a little bit of interest. And I feel like once you start getting some letters from some schools, it kind of just opens up the gate to other schools. So it was like a very exciting thing to come down to the football office each day. And, I think there was like a desk or whatever, just all the mail, you know what I mean? And just getting that attention and the coaches coming to school and kind of like pulling you out of class. So I think it is hard sometimes to stay grounded, you know what I mean? Especially because for me, Dib was the highest sought after player on in that year, right? So it's like, he's going, you know what I mean? Like he's got, you know what I mean? Like he's going, you know what I mean? So I feel like, okay, like I gotta try to do everything. So it's hard to not let your foot off the gas. You're like, oh, okay, like they're coming, things are going, but it's all, looking back, it's all part of the game. They come to school, they talking to everybody, and they exercising their options. But just trying to stay humble and keep working with. I feel like that would be like the one thing that could have been a distraction. I'm like, oh, I'm getting a million letters from Louisville, and not even an offer, not even offers, right? But it's like, oh, I got a million letters, they just call me up, wish me happy birthday, you know what I mean? Like you getting a special attention for someone that I didn't always get that attention, right? Because I kind of said that I'm overachiever. Like I never was pegged to be like the one, you know what I mean? So to get that attention was really, really cool. But on the flip side, like when things didn't go the way I wanted to, that was a tough pill to swallow. I felt like I put the work in, I did everything I could do, and I just came up short. You know what I mean? So how do you respond? Like how do you react to that? And that was tough for me.
Let's talk about that.
Let's
talk
about
that, bro.
Okay.
You talk about coming up short.
Yeah.
I love come up short stories, man. My life is full of them, bro. But my greatest triumphs are based off of coming up short prior.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if you don't mind, you talked about coming up short, sharing that the story specifically with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, the recruiting piece was crazy, right? Like we just talked about that, but like when, you know, signing days are coming, cats are getting offers. And I think it was like Coach George at some point, and I don't remember at what part of the year it was, but like he pretty much kind of sat me down and was like, my man, like, all right, we got to start looking at these D2 schools, these D3 schools, like kind of breaking my bubble, like, yo, like it's over for you, you know what I mean? And I couldn't handle it, like I lost it, you know what I mean? I was crying. I wound up leaving the school. I just bounced, and that's not my style. Like I totally was like, I follow the rules, man. I definitely follow the rules. You're definitely a rule follower. It's not that. I bounce. You know what I mean? I'm like walking down. You know, I'm heading towards my house. I'm just upset. And Sim had to come and get me. Like he chased me down in his car, and like I made it like 4 or 5 blocks. You know, I don't even think I have a cell phone, right? So can't nobody get a hold of me. So he just came and got me, brought me back to the school, and like I was devastated. But what it was is I had a lot of D1AA situations that I could work with, but then there was a lot of like preferred walk-ons. Like, yo, we'll let you come to camp, chance. You know what I mean? But we can't guarantee you nothing. So I just was so dead set on it. You know, Did was going to Temple. I'm like, all right, you know, I'm gonna bet on myself. You know, I work with my parents. We were able to make it work financially. Like, so, you know, thank you to them. And I was like, I'm gonna go. So continue.
So this is senior year. That was
senior year. It gotta be senior year. You know what I mean? So I'm decided. So I'm going. So, you know, at that point, I still got to get accepted in the clearinghouse, all that jazz, which wasn't a problem, right? You know what I mean? Like I had grades and everything.
Because you did that part, you handled.
I took care of all the, and that's what made it so hard, right? Because it's like, damn, like I did all the right things, I checked all the boxes, and it's just like, you know what I mean? So, that was it. So I went to camp that like July 6th. You know, like school ended June 18th. In July 6th, right after the 4th of July weekend, like boom, we was up. Can't like, you know, I think camp started a little bit after that. Like so summer session, like you kind of get a early drop on college. And you know, the bottom of the barrel, you know what I mean? Like I think there's 102 players, like 120 I think come to camp and like 102 make it. I had the 102nd locker, man. Wow. I had the 102nd locker. So
yo, hold on. Let's because I love stories like this, Jared.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about you said you mentioned a term that I love. I love this term that you mentioned, and I was just talking about it last night with another friend, betting on yourself.
Yeah.
You said, I bet on myself. I'm a bet on myself. Like, talk us through what you mean when you say that.
Shit, you know, and it's something that still goes on for me even today as a professional, but it's really like blocking out the noise, like believing there's going to be plenty of naysayers. Like when I was a sophomore, I remember, I'll never forget this, right? And I'm not going to say the individual's name, but there was one of the upperclassmen on the team, and for whatever reason, I don't know why or how this came up, but I told him, I'm gonna go D1. Like I'm going D1, and he was like, "Whatever." Like, okay, no change. Like laughed in my face, right? And I never, ever kind of let up on that. You know what I mean? So that was kind of like a chip on my shoulder. And then no problem with Coach George and Sam, but they told me, you know, everyone's telling me, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You know, and I just was like, all right, I know what I'm doing. Like per se, like I kind of just bet on yourself, believe that you're gonna have the strength for the ability to kind of to pull it off. And a term that I kind of believe I picked up at Temple is buy-in. I'm just buy-in. I'm going all in. I'm gonna give leave no stone unturned. So that way, even if you don't get to the ultimate goal, like you don't 20 years from now, like I could be saying, if I went to D2 school or D3 school, what would have happened if I had just tried? Or like what would have happened if I just went for it? So like leave no doubt, you know, just bet on yourself. And that happens outside of sports. Professionally, you might not get the promotion that you wanted. So you might have to bet on yourself and switch companies or switch roles or take that risk or take that gamble. So you gotta, but that comes from doing the work, right? So I knew what it would take and I knew what needed to be done. So you have to be, I just, to add to that, like if you're gonna be an astronaut, and everyone's like, you're not gonna be. You have to know what it takes to do that. You're not gonna just wake up and be an astronaut,
yes,
right? So you have to
yes.
kind of put the work in and kind of have that mapped out. Like there's a fine line between dedication, I guess, and insanity, right? But you need to find that for you.
Yes, like it can't be. It's funny because I remember my grandmother used to say something when you pray, move your feet, right? So it can't be like you just saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, but then you're not putting in that work. Like you got to put that work in,
right?
You got to put that work in. So, Jared, was there a time when you got to not Keene? I'm sorry, you got to Temple.
Yeah.
It's camp. You said you got there July 6th, so you're in camp. Was there a time during camp when you were like, "Yo, things ain't looking too good"?
Yeah, like what? Plenty, you know what I mean? Plenty.
Like, what was that like? Like,
yeah,
like
that first day, that first like week, man, when we got into full pads, I think everything was cool. Getting in, they ease you into some stuff. You do have this weigh-in that you got to do. So I remember me and some of the other big guys like cutting weight to make sure we came into camp right. But just that first week in pads, man, I felt like I spent more time on my back and on my head than on my feet. And I just was like, yo, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm built for this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just every guy is like 6'6". 3+. You got juniors and seniors who are just been there, just grown men, right? And I'm just like, whoa, like I don't know, if.
And then you were walk on, right? So
right,
they ain't cutting you no slack.
Nah, no, none. But just the same rules apply, right? So I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the most talented here, right? But can I be early? Can I know my playbook? What can I know? How can I be an asset, right? Like, Coach Golden used to say, find your niche. Like he would be honest and be like, look, man, like, you're not going to be a first round draft pick, right? So what is it that you can do to add value? What's your niche? Like, who is Jared Brabham? Which, as an adult now, I think like professionally in a corporate setting, what is your brand, right? Like, what am I about when I walk into the boardroom or whatever? Like, what do I represent? So it's like I had to figure that out there. You know what I mean? And I just, I admittedly spent a lot of time on the scout team, and this is like, you know what? I'm gonna give a good look. I'm gonna put in the effort. I'm gonna take my weight seriously, my film. I'm gonna be ready in the chance that something crazy happens and I am in the rotation. Ready. But I'm ready. You know what I mean? And I think that you need that in that setting because there are so many athletes who are so talented that they don't particularly have the work ethic, right? So when you look at an NBA team, right, right now, you don't have 11 LeBrons, right? Like you gotta have, the guys that are the glue guys. So I just take pride in that, and I want to get a chance to be on the team and get a chance to ball.
That what a great story, man. And every camp is just, especially when you're new. I remember sophomore year, you probably can go back to your high school year when sophomore year going to your first double sessions. It's like you have that same feeling of like you're questioning, do I belong? Can I do this? Right. Then you up that, which it is a huge gap in terms of between senior year football, high school football, and then going off to major Division I college.
It's crazy.
Unless you're coming from like an elite high school program in the country,
right?
You are going into a world that is just far, far different than anything that you've ever experienced. So to be able to make it through that, I think is crazy. What did that do for your confidence?
I don't think I really was resting on my laurels. I never really had that sense of like, I'm here. Like, I don't know. That was Coach Golden ran a very blue collar, just bring your lunch pail every day. So, there wasn't a lot of high fives and high praise. It just grind and grind. That first year we were 1-11. And then the second year was like 2-8. So it was like, there wasn't much celebration going on. So it's just like there was so much work that needed to be done. Yeah. They didn't allow very much in terms of like culture to just be like, woo, so just grind it out. We in there. That's it. Yeah. So I wouldn't say till, you know, like now, like as an adult looking back and being like, whoa, like I really kind of did that. Like that's not something a lot of people get a chance to do, you know, as I meet people as an adult, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, I play Division I football. It's like, oh, like people don't get a chance to do that, whether I was good or not. You know what I mean? I was there
to say that. Not too many folks get a chance. You know, and it's you were a part of something there at Temple of building something special there too.
Right.
If I'm not wrong, those were the years of like kind of setting the foundation at Temple. Right.
That was the first class. So like that 2005. So the cast that came in spring 05, like the first class, but like 06 was like that first full recruiting class that Golden started. And, you know, I'm very proud of that, to see Temple go on and be ranked. You know, they've been on College Game Day, you know, I think when they played Notre Dame. So to see the program really become legitimate program and know where it was at, you know, 10 years ago, like it's cool. So, I still, more recently have been involved with the program from from a mentoring perspective, like talking to the young athletes and kind of trying to say, hey, you know, you might not be a first rounder, but you still can thrive, you know, and take advantage of the opportunity and kind of give them perspective on things that I wish I would have done when I was playing. And, you know, some of them, sometimes it's received, sometimes it's not, but, you know, it's just to be
involved. But you're putting it out there.
Exactly.
Yes, you're putting it out there. And I think that's one of the, you know, you had mentioned something. You said finding your niche, which I definitely believe in, and breaking it down even further to going into situations, whether it's a professional situation, whether it's a team you're trying to make, or so on or so forth, a club, whatever, what have you. Assessing the situation and figuring out what is needed, and then saying, how does my skill set fit into what is needed here, and then just be the best at that. Like bro, there's people in the Hall of Fame right now for doing that. You know, you
look at Brabham all the time.
Dennis Rodman,
30 boards, 1 point. You know what I mean? Yeah, right.
You know, in professional, in jobs are the same way. Careers are the same way. Sometimes we get tunnel vision, and we're like, "This is my expertise. This is what I do," and we miss the big picture of like, okay, but right now the company my organization really needs, you know, X, Y, and Z. Even though that's not my thing, but you know what? Nobody's filling that gap right now. So how can I do that? You know, what is it going to take for me to bring? What can I bring to the table to fill that gap? So I like that finding your niche and then working that every day and becoming brilliant at that niche. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. I love it. So yeah, you're at, you know, Temple. In terms of academically, man, like what is major wise? Like what's going on there?
Yeah. Ironically, so I didn't really know what was going on, man, to be quite honest. So I always laugh at this. I wanted to be an athletic director because Chuck Ferrara had a PS2 in his office, and he would be playing that joint, and I just thought that was so fire. I'm like, yo, he's coming to work. He on the PlayStation. Like he seems like he's always in a good mood. Like, you know, he comes around to practice and make sure everything's straight. Like it seems like a thorough gig. So I was in, so Div and I participated in Dr. Mac. So that's like at a Red Bank, right?
SAT,
so so she was like kind of pro bono helping us with our SATs. And a lot of athletes go through there. So can't thank her enough. But like that's how we got to spend a lot of time with Sean. He was part of that.
Yes.
So we would go every Sunday. And when we're filling out the applications, they helped us with the essays and the applications, like the whole administrative side of getting to college. Like that was wholly Dr. Mack and her team. And I was like, I want to be athletic director. So we looking at the majors at Temple guy, and then we see sports and recreation management. I'm like, that's probably it. Not knowing that it's like school administration and like, you know, like a whole different thing.
What you got to do. Yeah.
Again. And you know, that's something that for the football piece, I'm like, okay, I think I got to do this, but in that lane, I didn't really have a guidance or a mentor. So I just was like, I think that's it. And I just that was it. I never pivoted out of that. So I was studying sports and recreation management in school, tourism and hospitality management. So it's like a subset of the business school at Temple. So yeah, I was doing that, and yeah, that's where I was at.
Wow. So you end up, so Temple, in terms of your degree, what was your degree in?
So I have a Bachelor of Science in Sports and Recreation Management. So the track I wound up taking was operations management. So part of that program, you do 2 internships, and I was fortunate enough to do mine at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. So like I was the operations management intern for the Wells Fargo Center. So like Sixers, Flyers, concerts. Just running the operation, right? Like from the time
that's cool.
The game closed tonight. What do we have to do
to get ready for it?
To turn it around and then to be able to run it during an event. So like, I got a ton of cool experience. Obviously, all the Sixers games, like all the concerts. So like as a young adult, coming from Long Branch and then being able to be in Philly and see all these things up close was awesome. So I did that and it worked out. So I was fortunate enough to get a gig working for the Phillies straight out of college. So
Out of college?
Wow. Right out of college. So I was the operations manager for Citizens Bank Park. Did that for like a year and a half, and I hated it.
Word?
I hated it.
I'm thinking like, yo, that's a dope job. Yo, you get to be at the stadium.
I know.
You hated that?
It's crazy, and I say that to say like, I tell folks who I mentor, like, be intentional, know what you want to do, but sometimes that plan that you line up, it's just not gonna be it. So like I was at the stadium, it was dope, but it just wasn't my thing, man. So like it was hard again, I found myself in a troubling position to where that was the goal. All right, I'm gonna get a job with a sports team. What do I got to do? Right. All right, I got to get the internship with these guys. Boom, 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 boom. Line it all up. I graduate. I'm doing it. And I was like, I'm here. And I'm like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. So that was tough to kind of be like, what am I going to do? Like my degree is for this. I've been trained for this. This is like this is my thing. So, but it's like, I'm not going to do this for the next 50 years. So what do I do?
So what did you do?
I decided that I was going to go to the Army. It was a complete pivot. So like, and I always have to explain to people how, like, most people go to the Army first and they go to college. So when people look at my resume and stuff, they're always confused. And I'm like, so that was
how'd that come about, decision. Man? What, like, talk to us, like, what was your thinking? Talk to us about, the progression of thoughts that you went to make that decision.
Yeah, so I graduated, I was in a serious relationship. So I had a girlfriend, we had been together since like my freshman year. We were living together in Philly, everything. And I'm working and I'm like, yo, this ain't it. And I was trying to figure out like, what could I do? And like my degree, which I tell people now to be mindful, I talk about finding your niche, but like be mindful and finding a degree that is too concentrated because it could prevent you from building your brand into other things.
Advice.
Right? So I was locked. Like I had this specialized degree in this thing that I don't want to do. So I was like, what I'm going to do? And I just start thinking through stuff. And like, I have some student loans and I'm like, oh, the Army could pay for the student loans. I could get some, like, I could travel the world. I'm not knowing that the Army doesn't get to do that, like the Air Force and the Navy. So anyone thinking about the military, be mindful of that. Like,
if that's one of your goals.
If that's your goal to see the world, the Army is not it. But again, what I will say is if I decide to do something, I do it to the max. So my goal was to join the Army and to be special forces. Like I wanted to be a Green Beret. Like that was the goal, right? So then I'm like, so what I got to do that? So at the time, like I had played football, but I never really lost the weight. So I still was like over 300 pounds, right? So I still was big. So I'm like, okay, I know, I see you got to pass the APFT, you got to be able to run 2 miles, you got to do all this stuff. So I ran a mile to see like how far off the mark I was. And it was like 13 minutes, like it just was bad, and I think I needed to be able to run 16 or under to do it. So I told my girl, my wife now, I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna join the Army. And she's like, yeah, all right. Like, I'm like, all right, So I just that's what I had to get in shape. Wow. So I wound up in the next 18 months, I dropped over 100 pounds.
I remember that.
To join.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, man.
Through social media, I remember you chronicling it.
Yeah, that was it. So like I lost the weight, got eligible, did all took the ASVAB, did everything, and I think in like August of 2012, I was heading off to basic training. So I just I decided, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. It seems kind of lofty, but I think I can do it. And then I just put the work in again, like just no shortcuts. Yeah. It took me like a year and a half, and just put the work in.
Wow. Yo. So did you serving actively? How long did you serve?
Right. So I get in, I go through basic training. Then the next thing is airborne school, right? So I learn how to jump out of the airplane. So that's a couple weeks. And then from there, you're supposed to go to like selection, right? You got the selection process. Type of, exactly. Yeah. And I, being quite candid, I knew from going through basic and the airborne training that I don't think I was gonna be the special forces guy. Like just like I was like, yo, these dudes are running like 30 miles. Like it was yeah. So like
they started that journey in like middle school, high school, like
right. So like again, when I talk about betting yourself, there is an element of being like realistic with yourself too. So like once I got into that military game, like I'm like, this isn't the thing for me, you know what I mean? But so I was still in though. So at that point I had the airborne certification. So if you don't go through the program, once you're in, you wind up being airborne infantry. So there's a airborne unit at Fort Bragg. And then so I was in on a 5-year contract for airborne infantry. And then as soon as I got to the unit, and at this point I'm married. So I got married because I knew that if I'm going to go to the Army and be going all over the world, like, let me make my situation right. You know what
solidify
I mean?
That. Yep.
Exactly. And then I think 9 months after that, I was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. So as soon as I got to my unit, they like, we're in the middle of a train up. We going overseas in, what was it? This August or December, we out of here. So and that was it.
Yo, so did you ever think, Jared, like you played Division I football, because you're right. A lot of times people don't think like, oh, you go to college, play high college football, and then go, to serve in the armed forces. It reminds me of the Pat Tillman story in some ways. You know what I mean? To a different level. Obviously, he was in the NFL, but it was like that tripped people out. Like why is he go? You know what I mean? So did you, thinking about traveling to Afghanistan, was there ever a moment of like, what am I doing? Like,
never.
Did you? No,
never. I am fully, when I lock into something, like that's it. Like I don't even really question or kind of think, and sometimes to a fault, like won't come up for air. So like I was like, when I decided I was gonna go to Army, like I didn't want to be like, and no offense to any other MOS, right? But I didn't want to be a cook. Or I didn't want to be like, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I want to be a badass. So like I'm gonna go and do it. So like, the mentality of being in the infantry, it's like I wanted to go to Afghanistan. It's like, this is what I trained for. Imagine having camp for years and never having a game, right? So that's the mentality. So I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's tee it up. We out. Let's do this.
See, when you put it that way, that just made me think of it totally different, because I never looked at it like you just said it. Like I've played sports, I've coached sports, and I'm like, wow, damn, imagine practicing in coaching and coaching kids and preparing, but never ever competing. Like
crazy. Right.
That is a wild thing. So that does make sense. I'm like, all right, I need to see some action. Like I need to put this training to test.
Right. For sure.
What was that like, man? What was, traveling over, and I know there's a lot you can't talk through, but
sure.
Can you speak a little bit about your experiences with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, like I have some redundant themes in my story, right? But just buying in, right? So you might not like the guy to the left of you. You might not like the guy to the right of you, but essentially you going on the biggest road game of your life at that point, right? So like you going into a war zone, and it's like your obligation to make sure that everybody comes back. So just really like not doubting, not questioning, being fully bought into the training, to the mission, to whatever it is you're set out to do. And then, it was right up my alley. Like it was kind of like football, but in a different version, like just being on the team. Here's the challenge. Here's what we got to do. And I think early in my career, like when I was working for the Phillies, that's what was kind of missing. Like I did feel a little bit out on the island. I didn't have that camaraderie, that that teamwork.
It was
and I think that's why the Army I thought was a good spot. You know what I mean? For me.
Got you. Did you run into people though, Jared, in the Army? Did you run into folks who you could tell didn't have that team background?
Oh, for sure.
Like, it was new to them.
For sure.
And I'm sure that those people stand out a lot. Like they probably stuck out like crazy.
It's always, and I'm stereotyping and generalizing, but it's always the athletes, the high school athletes and the college athletes get it.
Yeah.
And it's the kids who maybe weren't into sports or were into something that maybe wasn't as team driven.
Yeah.
Like a swimming or like a wrestling or something where it's more individual, to where they're like, you gotta bring them in and mold them because they didn't understand what it meant to like conform and go. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah. I always, I actually, if I'm hiring folks, that's a question I love to ask. If like, what has been your team involvement? When were you ever part of a team that failed, and what that was like? I love asking questions like that because to me it speaks a lot to how folks deal with adversity, and things of that nature. So you're over in Afghanistan. How long you stay there, man? How long? What was your time?
Like 9 months? I think I was there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Wow. That's powerful. It's funny because I remember it was probably maybe Facebook or it was Instagram. But it was a video you had posted. I guess you were doing training, weaponry training. But it was like 3 or 4 different guns. You were like walking towards a target. I don't know if you remember this, but you were like walking towards a target.
Yeah.
Look at Brab. I mean, we called you Brabs. I was like,
right. I was nice with it.
Like, yo. I was like,
definitely, right. Definitely got some good skills out of that experience for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. I'm looking at that like, all right, bro. All right. Because it's like I'm just seeing a collection of different skill sets, different experiences. And to me, that makes such a well-rounded person. It just makes an exceptional human being, man, who has experienced life at a very high level. Now, how do you transition from Army to now, what happens after, your time in the Army? What happens next?
Yeah. So, I mean, one part I did leave out about the deployment is my wife was getting pregnant right before I leave for deployment. So she does the whole deployment with me, she does the whole pregnancy
with you. Wow. So you missed all of that.
All of it, yeah. The whole piece. I got back like 2 weeks before my son was born, so I made it back in time for that. But that was obviously stressful for her.
Yeah, man, I'm sure. People had to step up. Family had to step up. I know.
No, Ivory's a tough cookie, man. So I think she held a lot of it. Yeah, we had some good friends and some people were helping, but she did a lot of it on her own. So I can't not give her credit. Yeah, for sure.
Salute. So but at least you get home. To see your baby boy born. Right.
So we take care of that. And then the crazy thing is, so she works at Merck as well, right? And she is kind of the tie to how I transition into the company. So she was working at Merck in like Philly, where we are now. And there's also a Merck site in North Carolina. So when I was down in North Carolina, she got a chance to also come down and continue working for the company after our son was born, and she had taken some time off of work.
That worked out. Okay.
Right. And as I, that what I was doing, that airway infantry, that's a young man's game, right? So I'm like, I think I didn't go until I was 22. So I think I'm like 27, 28, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing, right? Like I can't jump out of airplanes and be doing. I got a kid, everything else. So what am I going to do? And it was her suggestion to, look into Merck. They're big on veteran hiring, right? So it's like, okay, so now I got this sports management degree, but I've gotten tons of leadership experience at this point. You know what I mean? That's one of my strengths, right? Like leading others and kind of accomplishing things, but you can apply that to anywhere. True. So it's like, well, how do I merge past and present experiences to make myself marketable right now? So she was coaching me up, told me to look at Merck, and then I got an opportunity through like a veterans, like kind of like hiring program to get into operations management. Like my degree was on, but in vaccine manufacturing, not running a ballpark, right? So it's like, can you follow SOPs? Are you disciplined and detail oriented? Can you facilitate an operation? Can you lead? Yes. So that was it. So then I wound up coming back to Philly, and then she also had to find a role back up here too. So like we've been all up and down, I guess, the East Coast at this point. Nice. But got a shot as a vet to come in and lead a team that was responsible for some adolescent vaccines, and the rest is history. I just been taking advantage from there.
That's hot, man.
Yeah,
that's dope. And how long have you been there now?
4 years in February. I've been out and working for the company. So I think I'm on my third role now. So I knew. So this is what I'll say is very engineering oriented company, right? And that's not my background. So I had to figure out, when we talk about finding your niche, what value do you add? Where can I find a home in the company and bring what I bring to the table, but then still, be able to grow and develop, so I have found, so I had to do two things. I'm working on my MBA now, right? So I wanted to be able to validate myself as like a business leader, and then I needed to find a role that supported that. So that's how I've transitioned over from like the manufacturing side to now I'm in marketing, right? So I'm working in vaccines marketing for the company, but also taking my MBA to take like my leadership and practical experience and kind of merge that with some formal education to seeing those two. And here we are.
And put it all together, man. That is, it's like, and I always tell people the importance of constant reinvention, constant, and, just staying up on your game. Whatever the game is, staying up on game, because a lot of times people get positions and 10 years later, they're the same person that they were when they got that position 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Let me ask you, man, in terms of your motivation, in terms of what inspires you, like, where do you draw to get your motivation and your inspiration, man? Where are you drawing from to push you to like, all right, now I want to get the MBA. Now, I want to make sure, I'm reinventing myself. I'm able to pivot to here and there. Where are you drawing this inspiration from?
Sure. So I honestly had to say, I think early in life, it came from dealing with some trauma in Long Branch in terms of like, I had a little bit of being a young overweight kid, right? I had a hard time, again, being biracial. I did have some challenge with some bullying and just being able to fit in. So I think that the initial driver was behind, I just want to fit in. So like, I'm not going to be that guy. Like, I'm not going to show up to practice and not know the play. I'm not going to show up on the job and do a bad job. I never wanted to stand out. I just wanted to fit in, right? So I would do anything in my power to like fit in and assimilate with whatever we got going on. You know what I mean? So it was kind of, a negative, right? But then I think in that, I was able to obtain fairly good results, right? It's like, I got a chance to play D1. I got a chance to go to the Army now. I've got a chance to work at the Fortune 500 company. So it's like, I think like, this works. Like if you just figure out what it is you want to do, put the work in, you can get the positive results. So I think now it's not negative. Now I just want to be a performer. Like now I'm like, hey, I figured it out. I'm definitely not perfect, but I'm like, hey, if you have a vision, you put the work in, you apply the effort, like you can make it in whatever it is you desire to do. So now I kind of, Russell Westbrook talks about this a lot, but like, why not me? And, I guess a part of why I wanted to talk with you and kind of just share my stories, I think the representation is important, right? Yes. And like for me,
agreed.
The reason that I do a lot of mentoring now, whether it's through Merck or through my fraternity or through my personal time, I like to let the next generation know that it's out here. Like you can go get it. And, I've stumbled into that, but now as an adult and a professional, I take my networking very serious. And I have a lot of mentors and sponsors who are very high up in the company. And I've learned that they're no different from you or I, right? They put the work in, or they've gotten the right break, or they're in the right place at the right time.
So true. So true.
I try to say, like, why not me? Why not you? You bear nothing to lose by shooting your shot, right? But you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Exactly.
Definitely. I love that, man. We do, man. We out intimidate ourselves so many times, fam. Right. We take ourselves out of equations, like, and what you said is, I remember having this conversation with so many people in terms of like, when you brush shoulders with some of these folks who are in high positions, you realize quickly that, I can hang. Or if I would have got this break, or if I can get this connection, or get my foot in the door, as we say, it's like, I can hang. But so many times we have that imposter syndrome of like, we don't belong, or I'm not good enough, or, I can't overcome. But I think when you start, it's just like when you got to Temple. Like, there had to be, once that summer was hard, that camp was hard, but it had to hit you like, all right, though. You know what I mean? Like,
like, it's all good. I'm good. I'm alive. It's all well. Like, I can do this. Like, for sure. 100%. And I think that at this point for me, I'm like, sky's the limit. Like, so, like, I'm fortunate at Merck to the CEO, Ken Frazier. He's a black man from North Philly. Oh wow! Like, he's a regular guy, and I think
that's dope.
I got a chance to meet him at a Christmas party. Like dope. when I was early in the company, and I really realized that he's a regular. And Temple is in North Philly, right? For those who are not familiar, so it's a tough place, and he's a regular guy. And then from that point on, like, seeing him be like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and the things that he's done, I'm like, why not me? So why not me?
Exactly. So now let me soak up all I can.
Exactly.
All I can and that's another thing, if you don't mind, before we begin to wrap up, can you talk to the community a little bit about, I think mentorship is important. It sounds like mentorship is important to you, but what I want you to talk about is the importance of accepting guidance and mentorship. Like, it's one thing to like, I'm the mentor, but sometimes some folks and some young people and some adults have problems accepting coaching or mentorship. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about, do you seek mentors out? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I think the first piece in that is really being self-aware. Like, you kind of have to self-assess and know where you're short and what kind of mentorship do you need, right? And I think that the problem with people maybe not wanting to receive guidance or receive positive feedback or negative feedback is that they might not be on the plane and there with themselves, right?
Yes.
But if you're able to get past that, why would you go through and learn something that took me 15 years when I could tell you in 30 minutes?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, but you have to want to be coach. You have to want to be mentor. So it's like, you have to, I think, one of the things I tell a lot of my mentees is be intentional, like, know what you want. And if you're young and you don't know, you should at least know what it is you don't want. So you can start checking stuff off the list. So you might not know at 16, 17, like, you might not know, but you can start to figure out what it is you don't want to do. And then, and that's part of what I get out of the mentorship. Like, I will connect with people who are not particularly in my hierarchy or in my tree. So we call them informational interviews at Merck. And it's just like, hey, I see you doing your thing over here. That's not my field. I would love to hear how you got there, what it is you do, and you just get perspective and learn. And that helps me understand where I want to be in my long-term trajectory.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Because I think that's important, man. Mentorship. I explained it even when I was introducing you. I used the term that you were a coachable person, which to me, that's someone who's open to mentorship, open to guidance, you know. And I think back to the relationship that you all had with Coach Suzo, you know, because you, and when I say you all, in this case, I mean like the offensive line.
Of course,
you know, you all like he and Coach Suze was a different kind of coach, man. And everything. It was like a Jedi. It was very slow. It was very methodical. But I would look over at y'all, and y'all would really be engaged in this man, like, you know, like. But I think when I look at that line, you know, even like you and Jazz and Dip, I look at you all, those of you who are on that line, and I'm like, yo. Y'all were like soaking up. You were all coachable young men who were looking for guidance, mentorship. Like you know, and then to hear you talk now, you know that is still a major piece of your success, of your recipe. You know, to be great. And for career advancement, and just to be the kind of young man that you are and the family man that you are, it's awesome, man. So it really salute to you, bro. I mean that, you know, a lot of times parents ask me, you know, like, you know, what should I do with him? You know, Dr. Rawls, what I said, listen, teach him to listen, teach him to be aware, teach him to take guidance, to learn, to be willing to learn and open to learn, because those things are more important. Believe it or not, that's the most important thing, man. And you just broke it down. You just broke it down, Jared.
You can learn anything if you're willing to. You know what I mean? You can pick it up. So for sure, I agree.
Yes. So one of the things that I love to ask my guests, Jared, is that if you could go back to your high school self and give your high school self advice, what advice would that be, and why would you give yourself that advice?
So I got two, right? The first one I've kind of already touched on a couple of times, but just being intentional and deliberate, right? The decisions you're making as a young adult, you know, they affect your trajectory 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Like, I think for the high school kids or recently graduated, like that, it's like a critical crossway that can send you to the moon, or, you know, conversely the other direction, you know. So like, just be, and you might not have it right. Like, I feel like my journey has been up, left, back, down, right. That, you know, what we see on social media of people just instantly getting it and success and fame, that's not, from my experience, that's not been my reality, right? So just be intentional in what it is you're after, and do the homework and do the work. And then the second piece, which was a big one for me now, is be yourself.
Yes.
Right. So you spend time developing an ego that you're not, or being someone who you're not because you're trying to fit in. Like, be comfortable with being yourself. Right. And I think that I got that advice from a mentor of mine when I was getting out of the Army. And he was like, people like talking to you. People like you. You have a good personality. Just be yourself, right? You're going to learn whatever it is that you need to learn. You're going to pick up the skills that you got to put the work in, but just be yourself. If you spend time being someone who you're not, you can only sustain that for so long. And then you're going to find yourself in a position that you're not happy with, or you're going to have to implode your situation and kind of start from scratch. So be yourself, you know, and no better time than now, with the climate around inclusivity and just the conversations that are going on. Just be yourself and put the work in.
I love that, man. I think those are two things that we can definitely say can help us as individuals, as human beings. Be intentional and be yourself. Like, that being yourself piece. And don't get it twisted. When I was saying, you know, finding out if you're in a job in your organization, finding out what the organization needs, and then trying to fit into how can I, be the best version of myself in that position. I don't mean become someone else. I just, like that being yourself is so, I've seen so many people fail because they are trying to be what they think other people want them to be. And they end up miserable. And like you said, and a lot of times they end up leaving situations because of that. And that's what relationships, that's everything.
Right.
That's career, relationship, that's everything.
I just want to touch on something you said there, like when you were talking about like a company culture or whatever. I think a lot of times in our community that's viewed as selling out, like, oh, you're selling out. But I the way I teach people is like, don't view it as you're selling out, like you're buying in. Like you can buy into a team culture or a company culture and still be who you are. And again, to the earlier points is finding your niche, right? So it's like I work in a scientific company. I am by no means a scientist, right? But I bring like precision and leadership to that organization. So within that umbrella of Merck, like I have found a lane that adds value and allows me to be me. So, once you find that, easier said than done. I like to compare myself to Jimmy Butler, where like he's had success on a lot of teams, but it hasn't worked out. Minnesota, he did his thing, didn't work out. Philly did his thing, it didn't work out. And when you hear him talk about being in Miami and the culture, like he feels at home, he feels like he can bring value. So like just if the situation isn't what you want it to be, again, be intentional and be about your transition away from that and find where you need to be.
Love it, brother. And great comparison. And no cap. I'm sorry, but I think Philly is going to miss Butler. I think, of course. I think that I hate to say it, but I think if they had, dude, I'm upset though, because I really think that's the piece that they're going to end up coming up short.
Yeah, we need Jimmy. I hear you.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That grit, that edge, that that finish. Yeah.
Yes,
I hear
man.
you.
That but I'm pulling for Philly though. I like Philly. I like them. So I am pulling for that team, but I wish Butler was still on the team. Yeah. So with that said, bro, it's been so real, man. I'm so thankful for you coming on the show.
For sure.
I really, really, really appreciate you. I know time is important for all of us with our families, with our lives, with work and such. For you to take an hour and a half and spend with us, man, and sharing your story, which is an awesome, awesome story, bro. I appreciate you. I'm so, Jared, man, I'm beyond. I always say now I'm finished calling my former students. I'm finished saying I'm proud of y'all. I'm inspired by y'all, man. And you are another one who has truly inspired me. So, keep doing your thing in all of the ways that you're doing it, fam. We appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
No doubt. So with that said, man, we're going to sign off on this Sunday afternoon. It's early evening, man. If y'all going to watch NBA, go catch up on some of the games, watch the games tonight, or get out, enjoy this weather. Jared, get back to the pool, man. I know your people probably waiting for you. But once again, thank everyone for listening in. Those of you going to catch it on the rebound, I salute you for that. Have a great week, man. Let today be a start to a great week, man. And we'll see you all later on this week with another show. Peace out.
All right, guys.
It's a 9-chord banger. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Purpose and practice. Keep your mental sharp. Learn all the tactics. Dr. Ross dropping knowledge to the masses. Man, you now tuned in to purpose and practice. Purpose and practice.